Hey guys, welcome back to this content development crash course for absolute beginners. In this video, we'll look at the CSS typography. Typography basically means that how the text content of your website will look like, the font size, the font type, the colors and stuff. And we'll try to understand the HTML tags, the behavior of the HTML tag using CSS. So let's just start with the video. I have created this folder called project-css. Inside this folder, I have this file index.html, and I have this file opened in my Sublime Text and in web browser. Okay, now we can add. Now we can start adding some CSS to our code. Now I want to add some CSS to our heading tag, and if you see, our default h1 heading size is this, and I want this to be slightly bigger, and we can do this by CSS font size property, and we can just make it 50 pixels, and we do it by like 50 px, and it will make our font size bigger. Okay, now I want to give it a font family. Font family is like, you must have seen the font styling when you are using Microsoft Word, different font styling like Arial, Verdana, or maybe something else. So you can do this, you can change the font type of the text by using this property like font family. And inside this font family, you can open a quote, and inside this quote you can actually give the font family name. So I want this Calibri font style. So if I go back and refresh, you can see it's now the font style has changed. I want to add some color to our heading, and as you can see, our every different property is separated by this semicolon. So make sure to add this semicolon, or else your CSS will not get applied, as you can see. So make sure it is right and is now I want to add color to our heading. COLOR. Okay, and as you if you watched my previous video, in the last video I have used this named color like red, uh, or maybe blue. So these are like named colors. I want to introduce you to the another set of values you can give to colors, which is hex code, uh, which looks like something like this, like 454545. So you can use these values too. And to actually demonstrate, I put the link of this website, htmlcolorcodes.com, and you can select any color you want to put into your website, and this will actually give you the hex code of the color, and you can just copy this color uh, and put it into your site. And for this, I want this slightly blue. I just copy and go back to our code, and I just paste it over here, and you can see our text style has changed. You can pick any color you want by just copying this hex code. Okay, and you can even use these RGB values, and to do that, just copy these three values. This 247 indicating the red, 145 for the green, and this is for blue. You can just do it by like copying, and if you do directly paste it over here, it will not work. You can see it's again going to black. To actually use RGB value, you should use RGB function, and inside this RGB function you can pass these values, and it will start working just as fine. I usually consider using this hex code. I mean, they are just more easy to use. Okay, works fine. Now I want to add some styling to our paragraph. For that, just add a style attribute, and I want font size to get a bigger. So let's do this by adding the font size property, and I want 20 pixels for this. Okay, it is now working, and I want to, as you can see, our text is our each line having the space. I want to increase the space between each line, between this and this line, between every each line, you can see. So for that I use line height attribute, not attribute, the CSS property, and I want the line height to be, let's say, if I add 10 pixels, let's see what happens. You can see everything is overlapping, and that's because our font size is 20 pixels. So our line height should be greater than 20 pixels. So let's just make it 25. Okay, now it looks much better. Now we can add font family for this too. Okay, now font family is applied. Okay, if you have watched my last video, if you remember, I have mentioned about the internal CSS which is get applied to after this title tag. And the internal CSS is like we can define internal CSS for each h1 tag, like all the h1 tag having this style attribute. For example, if I add one more heading over here, another heading, and then go back, as you can see, I want this styling to get copied to this heading. For that purpose, actually I can just copy this thing and paste it over here. It will work just as fine. But it's not a good idea to write the same CSS again and again for each tag. So for that purpose we use internal CSS or maybe external CSS. I'll introduce you to the external CSS in the coming videos. So now just use the internal CSS. To use internal CSS, we can actually define the style tag after the title tag inside our head section. So we use this style tag, and inside this style tag we can actually define the common rule for all our h1 tag. So I want these CSS rules to get applied. Let me just copy and paste it over here, and we can remove this now. And when you put CSS to the internal CSS, it's a good practice to add a CSS property into a separate line. It just looks more clean to read. Okay, now if I go back to our output, you can see our heading is having this same property, and we can change the property directly from here. Like if I go to 20 pixel, it will get applied to both of the headings. So yeah, now let me just add one more paragraph. So similarly we can do this for paragraph 2. We can just add a p tag and close the curly braces and copy this CSS over here. Save, and now we can remove this style from both of our p tag. Now let's go and look at the okay, now you can see our font family is actually not working for this p tag. Let me just go back and see. Okay, now you see I have this single quote and closing double quote, so it should be single at the both of the end. Okay, now it is working fine. Now let me just introduce you to the another CSS property called font weight. It is nothing but it actually defines the boldness of the font, and you can define it like bold, and you can see our paragraph having this bold text, and you can even do it like bold, and you see nothing happens. So this font weight property actually depends on this font family. If the font family you are using, if doesn't have anything to make it bolder, it will not work. So even you can even have this values 200. Now you can see it's lighter than the previous one. So you can have values ranging from 200 to 800. You can even you can have 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and 7 or 8. So you can have these values for the font weight. So if I go 200, it is lighter. If I go 400, or maybe 300, it is slightly much bolder, and if I go 700, it is more bold. So yeah, so for this I just use this 200. Okay, now you can see our web page now looks much more appealing than using the core HTML. As you can see, by just applying some CSS rules, our web page is looking much better. Okay, now let me just explain you the behavior of HTML tags. Like I've introduced you to the div tag, and we have one more tag named as span, and I just add a background color to both of these tags, and let's see what happens. And to actually apply this, we can actually go to our internal CSS part and add a background color to our div, a red color for the div, and for span we can actually use this yellow. Okay, now let's save and go back. Actually, let me add some text to I am div, and okay, now we can refresh, and now you can see the div tag is using this full width from this end to this end, and span tag is using the width only required for the text. If I add more text, you can see now it changes the width of it. So this is called as this property of div is called as block property. It by default, this div has the um, block level indentation. Actually it uses this full width and changes the line, and then and span tag doesn't use the full width and doesn't changes the line. To actually demonstrate, if I add one more div tag after this span tag, you can see the div tag is coming to the next line. And what if I add one more span tag after the span tag, you can see it is appearing in the same line. So this is called as inline, and this is called as block. So div exhibits the block nature and span exhibits the inline nature. I'll explain it to you more in the future videos, like where to use div, where to use span, and there are lots of more tags which we will introduce in the future videos. That's all for this video, guys. If you have some doubts related to this video, you can comment down below. And if you want to join the group conversation of this course in my WhatsApp group, you can actually DM me in the Instagram linked in the description, and I'll send you the group link to join the WhatsApp group. And like and share this video and subscribe the channel for more videos like this. Thank you.